Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for the most popular and least listened to podcast in the world, the Sixth Sense Media Podcast, with your host, Mike Phelan.
I don't blame people for not wanting to be here right now.
Oh my gosh, in California, we're like some of the worst here, I
Mhm.
think. Yeah, but I thought you guys were doing okay there, sort of.
It depends on, like, Miami's pretty bad and
Okay.
Orlando, but everywhere else is kind of okay.
Yeah. I mean, we can't do anything here, you know.
Yeah. How does anything get done in LA if you can't do anything?
Nothing gets done properly. and also nothing really gets done. It's like we do everything by Zoom or remote. Like I've been having to do all my work remote, except there are a lot of people actually still working and getting sick, like going on sets.
Mm-hmm.
And getting sick. Not everybody, but enough people that I'm like, oh, well, is it worth it? Do I really care enough? You know? It's not like I'm doing brain surgery here.
Well, who's regulating the studios for making sure that everyone's tested when they come into the studio and anything like that? Is there any governing body that's looking after that?
Well, let me tell you, everything is suggested. It's like recommended.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a recommendation, but you can do what you want, really.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get a good producer and they're really on it, then you'll be tested every day that you're there, and you'll be tested with the other test, the one up the nose, like every 3 days, or you'll do a rapid test when you get to the set before you can get on. That's if you have a producer who gives a crap and they have the money to do it. And then and I'm talking union. Then
Mm-hmm.
there's union jobs where if you're hired, like I had this film I was on for 6 days, and I was getting tested with the proper test 3 days prior to being on set. 3 days. I'm not going to do that, because what happened on day 2 and 3 with my actors who are yelling at me in the scene without a mask on? I don't think so. I don't know them. So I just like, I'm not doing that job. And this was union, and that was the best they can do, was 3 days before, and then they were going to do one more test on day 3 or day 4.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's for like a block of 7 days or something like that. And I'm like, it's not enough for me personally. And this is before it got really bad. Now it's like it turned really fast. So
Mm-hmm.
so it's not regulated. It's just recommended.
I'm surprised SAG hasn't stepped up more and
Me too.
more or less demanded better conditions for all actors that are working in any. If you're working outside, I can kind of understand being a little flimsy with the rules, but if you're in a closed set, I mean, there's no protection for anyone.
Absolutely. And they may have, in the last week and a half, I read something, they send you these newsletters. They may now be saying something like, if it's not SAG, it's the health department saying that now they have to, that it's getting a little stricter, just a little bit, but it's not, but this is recent, in less than 2 weeks, within the last 2 weeks, they came out with something, and I'm still not remember exactly what it was, but it's nowhere near as what I think it should be.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of strict. A friend of mine, she does sets for one of the episodics, and she's like, the only thing that's changed is I wear a mask. I'm like, really? And I think she might get tested like every 8 days, but what about those other days in between? You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're yelling at each other. But here's the thing, the crew gets to keep their mask on. It's the rest, it's the actors, we have to take our mask off. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, so I said, look, when they have rapid testing where I can know that this guy's cool and I'm cool, that I'm, in a scene with, then I'll feel a lot better. But I don't know for sure. I think what eventually will happen is you're going to have to be vaccinated,
Mm-hmm.
and proof of vaccination, and then also testing. I would hope, because, but it's like, I'm down. When are we going to get vaccinated? That's the other thing.
Yeah. I don't.
Who the hell knows? And you're like super young. It's like you're last.
I'm not that young.
But no, yes, you are. But you're like on the last list, though, I think, in terms of your but like there's like 5 categories.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like the fourth. I'm the second to the last. You know what I mean? I'm not the last, but I'm the second to the last. I was like, oh my god. It's so
But
funny.
at the end of the day, at the end of the shooting day, is anyone going on set and cleaning the props and disinfecting the furniture?
Take. Like you do a take and I touch this, they come cut and somebody comes and is supposed to clean every single thing that's been touched in between takes, which I love. But yeah, the guy's still like spitting at me when he's talking, it's still happening. So
I think directors are going to have to start blocking their shots like George Lucas does, where it's just, or it's just straight on, or it's just an over the shoulder.
yeah, and like the 6 feet apart,
Yeah.
or more. Well, there's a TV show where they're really good about that called Justice for All.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I see it, she's wearing a face shield in the scene, this actor. And I'm like, good for you, girl. Because I would be like, if it's my show, I'm like, where's my shield? Where's my plexiglass? And then there's other people on the show wearing masks. And I'm like, well, I want to see that because I feel better watching these actors,
I think we'll see an increase in medical dramas then, because it's going to be the only way that you can realistically get away with it, with everyone being sanitary.
Unless you just make it, hey, this is during the pandemic, which is what Justice for All is doing. But I still, and it's funny, I could probably tell you there's a couple shows that I've seen that, but not too many. So mostly people are just ignoring that there's a pandemic. Yeah, well, no, we're fine. So, but it's been interesting.
What about as far as voice acting? How is that all going down? Are you doing it all remotely, or are you still having to go into the studio?
Some people's, like, there's a job now that I'm probably not going to do. It's a dubbing job, the difference, and I can't do it here. And I understand why, because I don't have the proper, I wouldn't be able to do it properly. So for those, they're going to the studio. Some places are going to the studio. I have a room that's dedicated, a tiny room that's dedicated for my voiceover. I'm not an engineer, but I know how to edit. I know how to take out certain breath sounds. I have filters, so I can do a lot. I can't tell you that I can level everything properly, but if I send my WAV file to somebody, they can do that. So pretty much, I have lost some jobs because I'm not an engineer too. But pretty much I have like a room, like the other day when we were supposed to talk, and the engineer got sick and the whole thing. And I was like, oh my God, now what? So they brought somebody else in, but I did the whole thing remote. But they wanted it done, just almost like doing it real time with a director. So oftentimes I have the voiceover set up, then I have the computer on with the Zoom. Oh, excuse me, this thing's in the way, with the Zoom, and I have the director directing me as if you were like you are. So it's interesting, and I'm able to do the whole thing as long as the Wi-Fi doesn't go out in the room, which it doesn't usually.
How are you feeling that you're performing as an actor in these situations where you're not getting that direct, like, person-to-person feedback? Do you feel like you're getting your output is the same, or do you feel that it's changing somewhat?
Well, in some ways the pressure is off a little bit. In some ways, truthfully, actors really like to be acting, directed as actors, as opposed to a lot of directors don't direct actors. I mean, they really don't. It's like, well, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. We're flailing around. I'm not even sure what the camera angle is looking like. What are we getting here? So a lot of directors don't say anything. So we're kind of used to that as actors. Some directors do. I have one guy, this is so funny. I'm hosting a YouTube channel. I shoot it. I text it to him. He texts me back the redirect. So I never talk to the director, and I'm reading it, and I have to then redo it. And I'm like, how is this? And I realize the less I ask questions, the better I get it. Like he'll say, be a little more zanier, and I'm like, oh, zanier. Okay, I'm already pretty zany on this, but okay. So I might do a little more, and then it's like, oh, perfect. It's like, really?
Are you sure?
I but I realize if my instinct is to go, what the fuck do you mean, blah blah blah. But then I hold back and I'll say good note, I'll say like great note after, and then he'll understand that I think his note was great and he'll accept my performance.
I gotcha.
So that was actually a really good question, because that's the kind of thing that happens. Like, it's a whole new world. Now I'm being directed via text. It's like that's the first.
Yeah, with my limited experience, the last thing I did was a reality show with my wife. And even there, you have a director. No matter what anyone tells you about reality television, there is a director.
There is, right? Okay.
So
I love it.
yeah, so you need that direction, because even if I'm trying to be myself, I don't know what they're going for the end product. So if I'm just being myself like I'm now, it might not be entertaining. So I need someone to say, emphasize this, be a little more goofy there, kind of look dumber here. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh my God, how funny. I'm so naive. I know that they're kind of scripted, some of those reality shows, but I still think they're reality. So tell me, what show were you on?
It was called Fix This Yard. It was on A&E.
Oh, interesting.
So even though it's a home improvement show, it's not so much reality as it is staging everything. If something happens, it didn't really, it wasn't spontaneous. There's not a whole lot of spontaneous things that happen. It's all kind of staged up, and then they put you they'll pull you to the side, and the like the AD will say, say this line, and then you read this line like 20 times until they get just the right tone.
Oh, how funny.
So they kind of tell you beforehand, like, we're going to make you look dumb here. Like, okay, I understand. It's reality. You're not watching reality to admire the people on it. You're watching it to get a laugh out of these normal people.
Oh, that is funny. Oh, see, I didn't even know that. I had an agent who had his own reality show. I'm like, really? My agent's got a show? It drove me crazy. And he'd like, come on, honey, come on, Dan. It was Pit Boss. So I'm like, fine. So I showed up. They didn't tell me what to do, but when we were doing the scene together, he knew exactly what he wanted to say, and he really led me as to what. It was very stagey, and I'm like, this is really uncomfortable. And yeah. So I saw how set up it was. It was like, oh my God. But it was fun as hell. It was great. And he deserved his own show, this guy. He did.
Yeah. It was a big departure for me, because for 20 years I had been in the horror genre and covering horror. So to all of a sudden make this huge jump, I was like, okay. Then I was like, and then it kind of set everything up where I got out of horror and just started doing more geeky stuff. Just because it kind of it took me out of my comfort zone for what I'm used to doing. And I was like, okay, I'll do whatever now, whatever.
That is so interesting. That's wonderful. It's good to zig and zag.
Yeah.
You were mostly doing horror, like interviews, and are you a filmmaker as well?
I make some stuff here in my studio, but nothing grand, nothing.
Okay.
I live in the neighborhood where Edward Scissorhands was filmed. So I've been trying to put together a documentary to interview the people that lived here during that time, because it was a big event in this tiny town.
Oh, I bet.
But it's just, I can't get it off the ground. And now it's going to be even tougher, because people don't want me coming into their homes, even though they're my neighbors. They don't want strangers coming in and filming with the threat of COVID there. So it's like, I guess I'll put that on hold.
Well, maybe not for too long. I'm so optimistic that we're all going to be, okay, kitty cat, that we're all going to be having the vaccine by the end of summer.
I hope.
I mean, I'm trying to be very optimistic. I know a lot of people in the health industry who've gotten it, and older people over 65 who've who have gotten their first dose anyway. I don't think I know anyone who's gotten second dose yet. They just kind of rolled that out. But yeah, oh, but that's kind of a cool idea. I like that idea. I think you should stick to it. And I think things are going to, when things open up, this is a good project for you. For
I
sure.
appreciate it. I much more prefer doing photography because it's so much quicker and there's
Yeah.
I have to have less people involved. I can just say, hey, model, come over here, come to my studio, we'll do this. I don't have to have a guy running sound and all that other stuff. I just like, here, stand in front of this backdrop. Here are the poses I need. Get out.
That's beautiful. Have you worked with any models over Zoom yet? Have you done anything like that?
No. Unless I'm actually controlling the camera and the lighting, it would be hard for me to get what I need.
Yeah. I was just
Espe-
thinking that's one thing it'd be hard to do remote.
Yeah, especially since I have all the props and all the stuff here that I need.
Right.
Yeah, it would be a nightmare because I like to involve, like, we did a Star Wars shoot last year. So I had the cloak for the model and I had the lightsaber for the model. And like before that we did a Hellraiser shoot.
That's so amazing.
It would be so hard to get all that stuff and like box it up, give it to somebody, and then hope I A, get it back.
Yeah.
And B, it doesn't get damaged.
Right. Or that they even get it with the way that the postal system is these days. This cat is so needy. Come on, stop it, kitty. Yeah. I guess it would be, being a photographer, that would be one thing during this time that would be very hard to continue, aside from being a filmmaker.
Yeah, I've seen quite a number of studios on my drive to work that have shut down. So yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do? I mean, it's gonna be hard to say, come in family for a portrait, and do you want to risk that to get a family photo going into some place that you don't know?
Yeah, that's
possibly risking it. So yeah, unfortunately, it's gonna kill a lot of small businesses.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sadly, though, I don't know if it's just because I live here in Los Angeles and people are so, in my industry, they're so almost stupidly desperate that so many people are working and are wanting to go to work. I have all my peers, they're all on sets, and some of them are going to non-union sets where there's no testing. I'm like, real? What? And it's not about the money, because they're not getting paid that much. They just really want to do it. And I had one actress friend of mine who I adore. She said, "Oh, I'm excited for pilot season because there are still many that aren't going. It's because you know how competitive the whole thing is." And she's like, "It's going to be a good pilot season for me because in my category, there's a lot of women who don't want to work, And I'm like, yeah, I get it." So she's like excited. And then the other friends I know who are actors are working all the time as well, because there's people in every category that don't want to work. So it's a lot less people to compete with.
And they're probably going to start going to other markets too, like Georgia and Louisiana, and I think Colorado and Arizona are starting to blow up now too.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, yeah, maybe, because I know LA is things are open. They're considering actors to be essential workers. I'm like, really? Are we really essential? So anyway, which is so stupid. And I feel bad for the real essential workers, especially when it comes time. I think, are they going to call us essential workers when it's time to get the vaccine? I hope the grocery store lady gets it before all of us. Just so stupid. But I don't mean to be dishing the industry. I just think that they're very irresponsible to keep it going the way they have. And especially, this is the best. Remember, we closed in March last year. So here we are, the whole world's in lockdown. Our SAG dues were due in April. We're still locked down. They made us pay it in full. They didn't even, like, my car insurance gave us a, big cut. They didn't even offer that. You got to pay. It's like, there's no work. What am I paying for?
The dues are like $5,000, aren't they?
Well, no, that's just to get in, and it's more like 7,500, maybe 8,000. When I've been around, so when I joined, it was maybe 3,500
Mm-hmm.
or less. So your dues are proportionate to what you earn the prior year. So, but still, it's like, don't make me pay the whole thing. That's just crazy.
You're gonna have to have an installment plan for your SAG dues.
Gosh, there's a pandemic. So, but they don't care. They don't care. So I'm just used to SAG making every mistake, kind of like Trump. What did I say that?
Yeah, I worry about the industry because if things don't improve over the next year, I think people are going to be so complacent with just sitting at home that they're not going to go out and enjoy films in the theater or go seek out new media. They're just going to kind of get into that habit of watching whatever is on Netflix or whatever's on Hulu.
Yeah, that's a great point. I agree with you. That's scary to me. Yeah. I mean, if we that medium, that would be terrible. It would be so depressing.
But at least the indie films have exploded this past year. Like everything that's been sitting on a shelf from 2016 is now on the market, which is great. It's great for me because it gives me plenty to do. But
yeah,
I'm hoping people start looking at indie films more than just budget films or things that are for like a niche audience, that people actually watch them and be like, oh, some of this stuff is really good, even though it's not made on a big budget.
Well, one of the things that happened when in April last year, when things started to open up again, or May, I forget when, was that the producers that I would work with, like commercials or whatever, they would make always make commercials for 3 times the budget of any indie film, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't know how to do it on the cheap. They didn't know how to do it properly. And so a lot of people who who were indie filmmakers were getting a lot more work because they understood how to do it. They had money then to test people, because that's a huge part of your budget is COVID regulations. And again, there were just recommendations. So a lot of them didn't do anything. But that said, they were looking for people to understand how to make stuff on the cheap and make it look great. So, and it's interesting because I had this one guy that I worked with who is in some capacity not that long ago, and he is also an episodic director, and he doesn't know how to make an indie film. So he wants me to actually produce his indie film. I'm like, I guess I could do that. I really don't like to produce, but I know I have all the people. Like, he wants to take all my crew that I used for like one of my films and make a great movie with them. And it's like, yeah, I could do that. But it's like, what's in it for me? Do I really want to put all that time in it to be a producer? It's not my deal. But I might do for him, since he's such a fantastic artist. He's such a great writer, and he's a great director. But he doesn't know how to do it like for tiny budgets, and that's all he can get right now. So now's the time. If you're somebody who really knows how to make a film really make it look awesome on no money, now you're going to get some work now, and it's going to look great. So some good things will come out of this.
You've been listening to the 6 Sense Media Podcast. You can find more of our celebrity interviews and roundtable discussions on iTunes, Podbean, and SoundCloud. Be sure to check out our movie, TV, and video game coverage at 6sense.com and fanbolt.com.